So what types of research were really used, and how did they lead to the final solution? That's the big question. And more importantly, how can we apply these principles to our work as graphic designers? Thinking about the end result, we realize, after hearing the feedback both directly from the consumer, the store owner, as well as the IDO team, that it wasn't perfect. It was better than it used to be, but it could still bear to be improved. And what impressed me the most was the reaction of the design team. When they were told that their idea needed improvement, they were excited. It sounded like they were actually relieved that they've discovered flaws. It took a whole different spin, didn't it? That they were excited that they succeeded in some ways and failed in others because they knew they could make it better in the future. A couple of quotes that I think are essential that we remember for our own work. First, the enlightened trial and error succeeds over the planning of the lone genius, and fail often in order to succeed sooner. So I want to show you some actual examples from some friends of mine, people that I know in the industry, as well as just examples that I've been able to find about how the process kind of works. Now, the question IDEO started with was about shopping carts, and it was very clear the space within which they were to research and ask questions. Good research starts with a good question. This was a project from a student who didn't have a project brief. No one gave her an assignment. This is Adriana Parcero asking a question if she could use fashion to talk about an unfashionable subject. What does that really mean? And what she discovered was that there were sweatshops and people didn't really want to talk about it. And she wondered if she could use a traditional approach, other than like a documentary film, to bring out the issue of sweatshops. And then, of course, asking how design could be part of this process. Can I use design to understand the issues in a different or unique way? The result was the Seams project. The Seams project is a project by Adriana Parcero for her master's thesis, a big research project. I wanted to show you her catalog, which was the outcome of the project. And when we look at the outcome, ask yourself what questions she must have asked to discover these facts. What research did she do in order to come to these conclusions? And how was she able to come up with such an innovative solution to a problem that's been around for years? As we click through the catalog and look at the different parts, we realize very quickly, as you can see, that she developed a line of high-end fashion, highlighting the seams on the articles of clothing due to the fact that she discovered that the workers are paid for every seam they sew. And that encourages, of course, speed of production. The cost, or the amount they're paid, is actually embroidered on the article of clothing by the seam itself. Each article of clothing also contains product facts, facts that point out different aspects of the worker's life, talking about where the actual article of clothing was made, where it travels to, etc. She pointed out all of the different factors, including environmental issues, the fact that these clothes often are transported around the world to different locations just to have a few seams sewn and then transported for finishing elsewhere. Again, using design as a research tool. We all know that the research starts with a good question, but in order to find a good question, we need to know enough to ask the right question. It's sort of a catch-22. If you don't know anything about something, how can you ask the right questions? How do we enable ourselves, rather, to ask good questions? Well, certainly not like this. Most of us seem to walk through our lives deaf, dumb, and blind. We plug our ears, we close our eyes, we don't pay attention to the world around us. One of the biggest ways that we can actually understand and make sense of the world around us and have good questions to ask is by keeping our eyes open, carrying around a camera and recording interesting events, observing things along the way. Also keeping sketchbooks and thinking about how that might influence what we do. We see something, we write it down, we keep journals. We've commanded in the church to keep journals. These are excellent ways of keeping a stash of good information that we can then draw upon when we start a project to begin to ask the right kinds of questions. Paying attention to the news media and really thinking about what's happening in our world so that when we are introduced to a new project or a new topic that we aren't totally caught off guard, that we live an informed and educated life. And then we begin. What's amazing about research is that it's not just about reading and looking at facts and figures. Research is more than just collecting facts and data. It's about making sense of it. It's about understanding it. This was a project for Honda, actually for Acura, a division of Honda. And they wanted to develop car show concepts. In order for the team that worked on this project to understand the actual project itself, they had to do a great deal of research or gathering in order to be able to ask the right questions. They learned all about the man, the history of the company, the history of their product, and they learned about what it means to drive.